The story of Samson and Delilah is one of the most enduring in the entire Bible. It has generated operas, paintings, films, and novels. The image is one of the most recognizable in Western culture. The mighty man, felled not by an army, but by a woman, betrayed by the secret he could not keep. Today we read the story through the framework of Sigmund Freud, and what Freud gives us through his concepts of erotic compulsion, the secret, the castration complex, and what he called the repetition compulsion, is a portrait of Samson that is less about supernatural power and more about the most human of vulnerabilities, the need to be truly known by the person you love, and the price of that need. Let me first tell you the whole story, because it is richer than the one scene most people remember. Samson appears in the book of Judges, chapters 13 through 16. He is the last and most flamboyant of the judges, the charismatic military leaders who led Israel during the period before the monarchy. He is destined from before his birth. His mother is visited by an angel who tells her she will conceive a son who is to be a Nazarite to God from the womb. A Nazarite was someone set apart for God by a vow, and one of the markers of that vow was that no razor should touch his head. So from the beginning, Samson's extraordinary strength is connected to his hair, not because hair is magical in itself, but because his hair is the sign of his consecration. It is the external mark of his relationship with God. And Samson is extraordinary. He kills a lion with his bare hands. He kills 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey. He tears off the city gates of Gaza, posts and all, and carries them on his shoulders to the top of a hill. But Samson has a weakness. He is drawn to Philistine women. His first wife is a Philistine, and then he falls in love, deeply and fatally in love, with a woman named Delilah. The lord of the Philistines comes to Delilah and offer her 1,100 pieces of silver each, a fortune, if she will find out the secret of Samson's strength. And Delilah accepts. She asks him 3 times. 3 times he gives her false answers, and 3 times she arranges for the Philistines to ambush him, and 3 times he escapes because the false answers have led them to do the wrong thing. He is bound with 7 fresh bowstrings. He snaps them. He is bound with new ropes. He breaks free. His hair is woven into a loom. He pulls it away. Each time she accuses him. How can you say you love me when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me 3 times now, and you have not told me where your great strength lies. And then the text says, she pressed him hard with her words day after day and urged him until his soul was vexed to death. His soul was vexed to death. And he tells her, he says, a razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If my head is shaved, my strength will leave me. Delilah sends for the Philistines. She lulls Samson to sleep on her knees, and while he sleeps, a man shaves the 7 locks of his head. His strength leaves him. He does not know that the Lord has left him. He wakes thinking he will shake himself as he has before, and he cannot. The Philistines seize him. They gouge out his eyes. They bring him to Gaza, bind him with bronze shackles, and set him to grinding at the mill in the prison. But the hair of his head begins to grow again. What does Freud make of this? Let's start with the hair itself, because Freud was very interested in the symbolic significance of his hair. In his essay on the Medusa's head, and in scattered references throughout his work, Freud connected hair, particularly the cutting of hair, to castration symbolism. The hair as a representation of power, potency, and vitality, the cutting of it as a symbolic emasculation. He was not alone in this observation. Anthropologists have noted the widespread cultural association between hair and power, and between the cutting of hair and ritual submission or humiliation. In Samson's case, the hair is explicitly his power. Its cutting is explicitly its loss, and it is cut while he sleeps, in a state of unconscious trust, on the lap of a woman who has been trying to destroy him for months. Freud would find this configuration deeply significant because Samson knows what Delilah is doing. The text makes this unambiguous. She has tried 3 times in exactly the way his enemies would try, and each time he has woken to find the betrayal confirmed. He knows she is working against him. He knows she is pressing him not out of curiosity, but for money and for the benefit of his enemies. And he tells her anyway. Freud's concept of the repetition compulsion describes the strange human tendency to repeat painful or destructive patterns, not out of stupidity or ignorance, but out of some deeper compulsion that overrides conscious understanding. People return to abusive relationships. They recreate the dynamics of their childhood in their adult lives. They find themselves again and again in the same situation they swore they would never be in again. Freud argued that this repetition is not random. It is a form of psychic work, an attempt to master something that has not been mastered, to process something that has not been processed. The compulsion to repeat is the unconscious psyche's way of bringing unresolved material back to the surface, where ideally it might eventually be worked through. Samson has already been betrayed once by his first wife, who revealed the answer to a riddle to the Philistines under pressure from her own people. He moves directly from that betrayal into the arms of Delilah, and then into the same dynamic: the pressing, the accusation of not loving her, the insistence on the secret, and he cannot resist it. Why can't he resist? Freud would say, because the dynamic is not primarily about Delilah. It is about something in Samson himself that needs to be known, that needs, at the deepest level, to be seen by the person he loves, that needs to be able to say, this is who I really am, this is the truth of me. The secret of his strength is the secret of his identity, his hair, his vow, his consecration. These are the deepest truth of who he is and what he is for. And there is something in him that cannot stand to keep this hidden from someone who claims to love him. This is, Freud might say, the erotic compulsion in its most tragic form, the wish to be fully known, to have no secret from the beloved, overriding every piece of self-protective knowledge available to consciousness. Delilah lulls him to sleep on her lap, and the man with the razor comes. Freud would note the regression in this image. Samson, the strongest man in the world, is in the position of a child, asleep, vulnerable, and held. The position of absolute trust, absolute surrender, of vigilance. He is given everything, including consciousness itself. And then the eyes. The blinding is the worst of it, not just as a punishment, not just as cruelty, but symbolically. The man who could not see, who could not or would not see the truth of what Delilah was doing, who was, in a psychological sense, already blind, is now literally blind. What was eternal becomes external. The psychic reality is enacted on the body. But then the hair grows back. This, I think, is the most theologically and psychologically significant detail in the whole story. His strength left him when his vow was violated. But the vow is renewed wordlessly by the passage of time and the growth of hair in a prison cell. He did not ask for renewal. He did not perform any rite of restoration. He simply continued to exist in the dark, grinding at the mill, and what had been given returned. At the end, at the festival of Dagon, when the Philistines bring him out to mock him, Samson prays to God once more. First prayer recorded of his in the entire story, and asks to die with his enemies. He pushes against the pillars that support the temple. The temple collapses. He kills more in his death than in his life. Freud would not find this ending triumphant exactly. He would find it true to the logic of the story, a man whose power was always entangled with his vulnerability, whose greatest act was possible only because he had been broken open, stripped of everything, and left in the dark long enough for something to grow back. The secret was given away. The secret renewed itself, and the man who could not see turned out, in the end, to see clearly enough.